As you can tell, it is a tier list because it's easy. um, but let's go over some ground rules. These are not really in a particular order, but at the same time they are. Um, but they can kind of be interchangeable with a few exceptions. That probably being these higher tiered ones. Um, but I'd like to get out of the way. It's missing the time dragon flag. I will add that at the end. Um, and I'll put a little picture of it where it belongs, and I'll address that one at the very end. And crossover sets will go right here. And it is, this one does seem to be missing a few, but I'm not going to talk about them just because I don't feel comfortable with talking about something that I never really played against or really looked into because I just didn't care for it, so I'm not going to talk about it. And let's get started. Let's start with the easy one. Now you're probably wondering why it says DDW at the top. Just because, personally, Darkness Dragon World is my favorite world. I started out with it, and I think the trial deck was Decimating Black Dragon. It was the Triple D Darkness Dragon World trial deck, or starter deck, whichever one it was called. But I love the more gimmicky playstyle in decks, and you'll kind of see that as this list fills out. So, like, Mill was my first deck that I built. And then I did Curse Count after that. No, not Curse Count. Death Count Requiem. My main ace deck is Curse Dragons. I do like their alternate win conditions. I think those are more fun, although they tend to be more solitaire, but they do have like that control aspect that I enjoy. And overall, I have all of the Darkness Dragon World decks as well, so that might be an indicator that I like them just a little bit. Alright, now let's go down in order. The Chaos. C tier. I'm gonna put that here just because I don't care for it personally too much. This goes here. Just because there's really, if you're gonna play it, you're only playing it one way, which is Auto Deity Army. But like there are quote unquote different builds with like example Corrosion Code, I believe it is. But you don't play it unless you're very casual because it's dirt cheap. But even then, it's expensive because it's Chaos and you gotta run 4 of all of the mandatory cards. Otherwise, it's just not playable. And I don't like that in a world or flag. And that will kind of show in the list. So that's all I really have to say onto it. I'm gonna put it in B tier just because I have some history with it. That's where I first tried to build a Ball Soleil focused deck in early Ace or early X with the Sun Deity Fragment cards. I tried to make that into a deck, and it wasn't good. It was very janky. But I love Ball Soleil, and now that they did make an official Ball Soleil deck, I'm kind of bitter about that. No worries, though. I'm not going to hold it against Bushiroad for taking my ideas twice. Once in I will address later. But it's alright. You really only play it one way now. I feel, but I love the opportunities in it because you basically just throw in the Ancient World package of Divine Dragon Creation. I forget the other two because it's definitely been a while. But you just throw those in really, and then you're just good to go. And next up is Hero World. I'm gonna throw the C tier. That's a good spot for it. I like it, but honestly not that much. The only thing that's not keeping it in D tier, or not putting it in D tier, is Justice Drum. And then that's it, really. I don't have much to say for it. I just don't care for the aesthetic of it, which, if you like it, more power to you. This is my personal opinion on how I feel about the flag. So, 100 Demons. I like it. I love playing it. My friend Dalton from TCG Buzz plays it, and it's very oppressive. It feels really bad to play against, just because with the new Yamigeto and the new support it got, it's just insane because you can't breathe without taking a damage, and then you take damage for taking damage. So Thundermine as a mechanic is very cool, but it just feels bad to play against because you have to basically OTK or you're screwed, and that's just not fun to play against in my opinion, but it's really cool. Magic World S tier. 2 reasons. Phantom Thieves. I can't remember the name though. Draco Phantom Thieves. Persona 5 really, but I love the treasure mechanic because between my buddy Bryce and I, who he also shows, he's on TCG Buzz regularly. Between him and I, it's kind of a joke that if it has mill, I'm typically playing it. Because I started out with my first deck being mill, and Phantom Thieves proactively or passively mill your opponent's deck by making treasures, and it's just really fun because you want to basically get a bunch of treasures to loop your deck with Holy Magic, and between Holy Magic and We Say Goodbye, you're just constantly burning damage, drawing cards, casting more spells to draw more cards, and then you loop it again the next turn, and it's just insane. You play a bunch of 1-ofs just so you can kind of guarantee that Holy Magic proc every turn, and it's just insane once it gets going. And then the impact kind of just, if they're not already dead with everything having double attack, triple attack, and then with the item it gives everything Shadow Dive. It's just an insanely fun deck. It's aggro but not super aggro because it passively wants to burn as well, I feel. So it's like a burn heavy mill deck that punches you in the face a lot. But I just really enjoy it. And then after that, Magician Drum. The best way I can describe it is with this. That's the only thing, and you'll know because that's its main card is the gotcha cards, and it's just very fun to play. Not good, but it's a very fun, cheap, casual deck to play when you're wanting to play those lower tier decks. Just because they are more fun because it's slowed down. Next up, Katana World. Let's see. A tier. I'm gonna put in A tier because really the ace decks honestly save it for me. Electro Deities was my first deck in ace that I actually played. I bought like 10 plus boxes of that set just to build it, and I had a play set and then some of everything, which was very helpful because then I could just build it, and then I helped our friend Jacob from TCG Buzz build Folktale at the time. But Electro Deities, I like OG Electro Deities, like set 1 for them, just because you swapped between Amaterasu and Susanoo. I felt that was very fun because you had your defensive phase, like you're off, like when it's your opponent's turn, you kind of gained a bunch of resources, and then you used Susanoo to be hyper aggressive and burn through all your resources, so you kind of broke even in between, and it was just kind of an oppressive strategy at the time. It was more control heavy because you could, if you wanted to, you could just sit on Amaterasu, draw cards, gain life, and then use your size 3 to just Susanoo on the board and just kind of smack them that way. And then all like the monsters net you value, like the size 0, Goryo, aka Barrel, because she has boobies. Very fun, awesome strategy. It got better with over time, but it became more Amaterasu focused. And then that's enough on that. And then next up is Blade Dancers. Very fun, passive, counter heavy, just because you want its impact as a counter, like a negate. So you nullify the attack, burn them damage, draw cards, do all this cool stuff, and it just was a more defensive deck. It was fun, but unfortunately it was never very good, just because everything was too aggressive for it to deal with. And you had to basically immediately get all your impacts and have the cards that recurred it immediately, so you could constantly just have all 4. And it was unfortunate because I really liked it. Alright, next up is Ancient World, which is gonna have to go in D tier. Not because there isn't good decks, because there are, but personally the only thing it has going for it, for me, is Raging Spirits. And they're not very good. They're good, just not very good. It's kind of like Magician Drum, Blade Dancer. You kind of play it in lower tier casual matches. But I just don't care for the aesthetic that much either. The decks just don't really do it for me. I'm not much of a Great Wall of China style player, where I like being defensive, but I don't like having a wall and then basically just sitting on that wall all game. It's just that's like the too defensive for me. But yeah, just not my thing. If you love it, good for you, but I just don't care for it. Next up we have Legend World. I'm probably gonna put it right above Katana World, but if Katana World was, if I were to put it before it, I would probably say just because Electro deities exist. Legend World, favorite deck from Legend World, Leviathan or Unlimited Blade Works if you want. When I first started playing Buddyfight in 2016, I asked my friends, or my locals, which was Dalton, Jacob, and Christian at the time, and our other friend that I will not name, just because he's not really on like the YouTube TCG Buzz channel, so but I was like, is there a deck where you just equip a bunch of items and then just unga bunga your way to victory? And they're like, no, but there's like dual wielding with like knights / adventurers and that fun stuff. But then, lo and behold, in X, it came out, my deck. I say my deck in air quotes, by the way. And it's just really fun, especially with the new Leviathan. I forget its name because I haven't played recently, if you couldn't tell. That searches them from deck, and then so you can kind of toolbox depending on the situation, but you really just went for your Excalibur replica because it was so oppressive with its you can't counter ability. And then also there's Imperial Core, which is a very defensive and reactive deck, and that's just kind of more up my alley. And it's really funny. It's not funny, but fun deck to play because reactive burn, and I just think it's fun. And after that we have, I would probably say, Imperial Arms, I think is what they're called. But I like how they're a combo deck. I think it's fun, and then it goes into aggro. Once you have like the main boss card item that you need, like a Siegfried and Balmung to put underneath, and then you just anti-dragoned, which was the meta, so it was a very like a not a, I would say a rogue deck just because it's combo. Um, but it also heavily depended on whether or not dragon type decks were meta, and a hard counter in my opinion was Phantom Thieves because they were Draco, not actually dragon, so it was like a loophole. And I just thought that was funny that that was like that. Next up we have Guardians and Executioners. I'm gonna put those together just because they're like two sides of the same coin, because one wants to have no cards in your drop zone, the other wants all the cards in the drop zone. But with the new Tanuki support, that basically made them interchangeable. They're both good, just obviously Guardians was put above Executioners because it is the more meta viable, because you recur your deck, which is very nice and helpful, and you gain a bunch of life, where this one was you mill your deck, you don't recur it, and you deal a bunch of damage, which is nice, but it just, there were better aggro decks to pick if you were trying to be more consistent and more like higher echelons of play. Alright, next up is Zwei/Dry. Dry is worse just because it's one build, you do it one way. And our buddy Bryce will hate me for saying this, but it's very oppressive when you do get it going, especially with the new stuff, because you just don't let your opponent draw with Black on, and they made it easier to do it and then just keep doing it, which is really what the deck needed. But it also feels bad because when it first got its support, I was playing Electrodes a lot, and they draw a crap ton of cards, and when the deck says no, you can't do that, it just feels really bad because you have a bunch of draw cards in your hand and nothing to really do. But Zwei, it's all monsters, so you're cutting out a good, decent card pool. Compared to Ein, where you could only use cards with dragon, but you could use anything that had dragon, not just monsters. So I felt there was only really one way to play it, especially when Neo Zwei was a thing. But again, personal preference. Lost World. Upper D, lower C maybe. I personally don't care for it. I appreciate the fact, and I think it's really neat that as a gimmick, because I would consider it a gimmick, that you can put it in any deck is really nice, because that makes a more mid-lower ranged deck good, because you just have it there, and so like you only need to build one Lost World deck, and then you just put 2 flags in any deck. But I also think that no deck should have to rely on a foreign mechanic, as in not from, like, for example, Blade Dancers. Really the only way that was going to be competitively viable, in my opinion, is if you put Lost World in it, and once you hit Lost World, the deck's game plan kind of shifts to just draw and win. And I just don't care for that. Especially when I played like Electrodes initially, I did play it with Lost World just because it drew so much. So you'd go into Lost World and then you just drew like 15 cards, and then you won basically on the spot, which is nice, but I just didn't care for, like, oh, my deck's game plan is completely different. But then that I basically put Dimension Dragons in that spot as well. But anywho, it's really a quote unquote controversial topic. Next up, we have Dragon World. Put it right here. Upper B tier. Upper B tier just because Drum exists. I do like Drum. The 5th Omni is pretty cool. Like, you burn yourself for a damage, or you take 1 damage, which is important in some cases. And then you just basically proc all your effects. So like depending on the situation, you could just gain life, destroy stuff, burn damage, and it was very, very fun. What else? My favorite deck for Dragon World was the Three Amigos deck that I built, just because it was combo and Dragon Force. I love the Dragon Force gimmick as a whole. In my Black Dragon Mill deck, I made it completely like as good as it gets. I knocked it down a peg because I refused to take out a copy of Dragon Force, like Black Dragon, one of course. But the Dragon Force or Future Force DX is a really fun card in my opinion. I really like it. It looks really cool, but I just love the deck and I enjoy playing it. Next up is Angel World. It's gonna go here, honestly. It's my least favorite world probably, because at least with Ancient World I like a deck. I don't really care for anything in this Danger World. Shout out to Dalton. He's why I hate it, because of Tyrant Punks. Because he only seems to play it when I'm trying to playtest something, and it's such an oppressive strategy, which it's good. I can respect how it's good, and I acknowledge that. But it also feels terrible to play against, because the God Punk stuff rips your hand apart. The Tyrant stuff does Tyrant things and punches you in the face hard and a lot. And it's just so consistent with at least how he built it, because he made it as good as it can be, because he has all those older Danger World cards and all the good ones, and it just feels miserable to play against. It's the deck that gets me the most salty out of all of Buddyfight. And yeah, so I just feel terrible playing against it. Next up, Dungeon World, upper B tier. Adventurers is why. Back in X, when Level Up came out, I wanted to build Adventurers because I thought it was cool. How it like was basically the anime deck because you played all the characters. I could not at the time afford to build the deck, so I traded for it, and the person I traded for didn't have all of the new Adventurer stuff. But they said they included a core package for traps. Now, if you paid attention, Lone Remote is an adventurer, so I just plopped him in there as like my boss card to play with Gao, because at the time Gao was the boss card for the deck, and it just all of a sudden became a burn deck that allowed me to draw cards because you played all your spells as traps to kind of make sure that you could consistently get Lone Remote off. And it just, at the time, caught my locals by surprise because they didn't expect it, they didn't really think about it at the time, and it just was actually quite good because adventurers were really good at the time. But yeah, so that's really it. Disasters is really fun as a rogue meme deck. Can't really think of anything else I like about the world, but it was enough for me. Star Dragon World. I like Jackknife. I like the cross knives mechanic. Actually, let's put this here. Dragon World. Because Jackknife. I love Gold Ritter. It's my favorite combo deck probably, and that's probably why I like it. Oh, it's Messiah Arms. I'm sorry. For Legend World. Messiah Arms is basically just anti-Gold Ritter. But anyways, Star Dragon World. Jackknife, Cosmo Dragoons are very fun. What else is there? Zodiac is very fun as well. It's like the control version of Jackknife, but Neo Dragons as a whole with cross knives, the toolboxiness and like the ability to be adaptive and change like on the fly what you need is very cool. I think I like toolboxy decks, Um, and yeah, that's and then Thunder Emperor fan, probably right here. Just because it kind of goes into the same vein as Chaos. You're playing it one way, which at least now, based on how my boy Christian plays it, is just a boss spam deck because there's a newer box that makes them monsters size 0, and so you just play all of them, and then you play your obligatory really good Thunder Empire cards, and it's just one way to build it, and I just don't think that's fun, in my opinion. I like being able to have the spicy text, and I think these worlds or flags that limit you on an attribute or an archetype just doesn't allow that variety that I think makes card games so enjoyable to play. Last but not least, I'd probably have to put Time Dragons. Probably C or D. I'll put it in between. Just because there's only, you play it one way, and the deck kind of is busted because it's like God Punks and Curse Grip, where it just forces things back, and once they get the flags flipped over, which is a very cool mechanic, I'll give it that, you just kind of lose, especially with the fact that you can put the fact that you can put Lost World in it kind of makes it even worse, because it does draw a bunch of cards, and then you just go Lost World and just win, because you can just be busted. And yeah, that is it for my Buddyfight flags tier list. Let me know in the comments what you would change. If you think I'm wrong, please tell me. I love to have discussions about this stuff, especially with Buddyfight being canceled and like no longer a thing. RIP Buddyfight, by the way. Hashtag RIP Buddyfight. I love talking about it. I love playing it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like if you liked it. If you want to see some more Buddyfight stuff, I still have some updated lit decks. I could do deck profiles and all that stuff if people show enough interest. I do stream on Twitch 4 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. If you want to check it out, I'll have the links down below for my socials and stuff. But other than that, take it easy, y'all. Peace.